There's a symptom of heart trouble that shows up years before a heart attack, that most seniors experience regularly, and that almost everyone dismisses as a completely normal part of getting older. It's not chest pain, it's not shortness of breath. It's something far more ordinary, something that happens in your legs, your sleep, or even your gums. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what it is, why doctors take it seriously even when patients don't, and what to actually do if you recognize it in yourself. Welcome to Neural Hours. Every week on this channel, I break down what's actually happening inside your body clearly, backed by real research, without the fluff or the sales pitch you'll find everywhere else. If that's useful to you, subscribing means you won't miss the next one. Heart disease has earned a reputation as a sudden event. One moment someone feels fine, the next they're clutching their chest. That's the version everyone pictures, but that's rarely how it actually begins. In the vast majority of cases, heart disease develops slowly, over years, quietly narrowing blood vessels and straining the heart muscle long before any dramatic event occurs. And the body does send signals during that slow build-up. The problem isn't that there are no warning signs, it's that the warning signs rarely look like what people expect a heart problem to look like. That mismatch between expectation and reality is exactly why so many warning signs get dismissed, explained away, or blamed on something else entirely. Arthritis, poor circulation, simply getting older. Studies looking back at patients after a heart-related diagnosis frequently find warning signs that had been present for months, sometimes years, before anyone connected them to the heart at all. And one sign in particular gets missed more than almost any other. The sign is swelling in the lower legs, ankles, and feet, what doctors call edema. Here's why it happens. When the heart's pumping ability weakens, even slightly, blood begins to back up in the veins, rather than circulating efficiently. Pressure builds in the smaller blood vessels of the legs, and fluid gets pushed out into the surrounding tissue. Gravity pulls that fluid downward, which is why it shows up first, and most noticeably, in the ankles and feet. Most people who notice this assume it's simply from being on their feet too long, or sitting too much, or just a normal part of aging joints. Sometimes that's exactly what it is. But when swelling becomes a regular, persistent pattern, especially if it's worse by evening, or if pressing a finger into the skin leaves a visible indent that takes several seconds to disappear, that's a specific sign doctors watch for closely. It has a name, pitting edema, and it's one of the clearest visible clues that the heart may not be pumping as efficiently as it should. The reason this sign gets dismissed so often is almost tragic in its simplicity. Swollen ankles don't hurt. They don't interrupt your day. They're easy to hide inside a pair of shoes and forget about entirely. But your body is quietly telling you something important, and the message is easy to miss, precisely because it's easy to ignore. There's also a reason this particular sign shows up specifically in the legs rather than elsewhere. Your legs sit at the greatest distance from your heart, and the greatest disadvantage against gravity of almost anywhere in your circulatory system. When pumping efficiency drops even slightly, the legs are usually where the strain becomes visible first, long before it would show up anywhere closer to the heart itself. There's a related version of this same warning sign that shows up specifically at night, and it's connected just as strongly. Waking up repeatedly to urinate several times a night, more than what used to be normal for you, gets blamed almost automatically on an aging bladder, or, for men, prostate issues. Sometimes that's the actual cause. But there's a heart-related explanation that gets far less attention. During the day, while you're upright and moving around, fluid that has pooled in your legs from that same circulation issue tends to stay there. But once you lie down at night, that fluid redistributes, moves back into your bloodstream, and eventually gets filtered out by your kidneys, which means more trips to the bathroom, specifically overnight rather than during the day. This pattern, frequent nighttime urination paired with daytime ankle swelling, is one of the more reliable combinations doctors look for. Individually, each one has several possible explanations. Together, they point much more specifically toward the heart. Quick question before we continue. Have you noticed swelling in your ankles by the end of the day, or found yourself waking up more at night than you used to? Type yes in the comments. I want to know how many of you have been quietly living with this. It's not only patients who sometimes miss this. Routine appointments are short, and unless swelling happens to be visible and mentioned during that specific visit, it's easy for it to go unrecorded. especially if the swelling comes and goes depending on the day. This is exactly why tracking your own pattern matters more than most people realize. A simple habit, pressing your finger gently into your shin or ankle in the evening and noting whether an indent remains, and roughly how many times you're waking up at night, gives you something concrete to describe at your next appointment, instead of a vague, "I think my legs have been a little swollen lately." Specific, tracked information changes how quickly a doctor moves. A description like, "My ankles have been swollen most evenings for the past 3 weeks, and I'm waking up 3 to 4 times a night to urinate, which is new for me," gets investigated far faster than, "I've just been feeling a bit puffy." If a doctor suspects this pattern is heart-related, the workup is typically straightforward and non-invasive. It often starts with a simple blood test that measures a hormone called BNP, which the heart releases in higher amounts, specifically when it's under strain. An elevated result doesn't automatically mean a serious diagnosis, but it's a strong signal that further evaluation, often an echocardiogram, an ultrasound of the heart itself, is worth pursuing. Catching this early matters enormously, because the underlying cause, most often a form of heart failure where the heart isn't pumping or filling efficiently, responds far better to treatment when it's identified in its earlier stages. Medications, lifestyle adjustments, and monitoring can meaningfully slow or even improve the condition. Left unaddressed for years, the same condition becomes significantly harder to manage. The term heart failure understandably alarms people the first time they hear it applied to themselves, but it doesn't mean the heart has stopped or is about to stop. It describes a heart that's working less efficiently than it should, and it exists on a wide spectrum, from mild and highly manageable to severe. The earlier stage on that spectrum is exactly where these warning signs tend to first appear, and exactly where intervention does the most good. Before you start examining your ankles every night in a panic, a little context is genuinely useful here. Mild, occasional swelling after a long flight, a long day on your feet, or hot weather is extremely common and usually has nothing to do with your heart. Salt intake, certain medications, and simply sitting for extended periods can all cause temporary swelling on their own. What separates a normal, explainable pattern from something worth investigating is persistence and combination. Occasional swelling after a specific known trigger, gone by the next morning, is rarely concerning. Swelling that's become a near-daily pattern, especially alongside new nighttime bathroom trips, unusual fatigue, or shortness of breath with activities that never used to bother you, is the combination worth bringing to a doctor. Here's a simple, practical step you can start today. For the next 2 weeks, each evening, take 30 seconds to press a finger gently into your shin and note whether it leaves an indent, and roughly count how many times you wake to use the bathroom overnight. If, at the end of 2 weeks, a clear pattern shows up, several evenings a week of swelling, several nights of unusual bathroom trips, bring that specific record to your doctor. You don't need to self-diagnose anything. You just need to hand your doctor a pattern instead of a vague feeling, because that pattern is exactly the kind of information that turns a routine visit into a useful one. If today's video helped you recognize something in your own body you'd been quietly writing off, that's exactly why this channel exists, to catch the signs most people miss before they become something much harder to manage. If you know someone who's mentioned swollen ankles or extra trips to the bathroom at night, send them this video. It might be the reason they finally bring it up at their next appointment. Your body rarely stays silent about something this important. It just speaks in a language most people were never taught to understand.